Hi, my name is Johnna, and this is Makeup and Mental Health Mondays, coming at you from a different location. Shout out to my cousins for setting me up with some lighting so y'all can see what I'm doing today, because I know y'all haven't been able to in the past, so here we are. Thank you to them for having me, and a little bit about what this is and who I am. I am a coach. I work with millennials and people who are looking to feel confident in their own skin, to help them really embrace who they are wholeheartedly and present their best self to the world. This is something that I'm doing every Monday. I sit down and I talk about a different aspect of mental health while I do my makeup. And what we're going to talk about today is one of my favorites. I feel like I say that every week. But they're all important. So today we're going to talk about self-love. And the premise of self-love, like, it's a huge buzzword now. Self-love, like hashtag, like self-love, self-care. And it's one of those things where, if you're buying the shoes and you're like enjoying the bath bombs and you're eating the cake, like, you're good, right? Like, you're doing it. Yes and no. There's so much more. And I know that if I'm like, hold up, I know that like indulging in yourself is what you've probably been told to do. Yes, that's part of it. I was confused too, and I was like, wait, but like that's not it. Like, I'm not done. And so I'm going to explain to you what I mean, what it really looks like, and what some ways are that you can start to love yourself a little bit more today. All of the products I'm going to be using are listed in the description below. The conversation continues in the comments, so if you feel so inclined, please do share, because if you have a thought or a feeling, know that it is valid and that you are probably in good company. So with that being said, without further ado, let's talk about love, baby. Okay, self-love. So, like I mentioned, it's a buzzword, and the first thing that I want to start with is talking about how there's a difference between self-indulgence and self-acceptance. And the indulgence is the fun part, right? That is the shoes, I've got some maskne going on here. Thanks, COVID. So self-love is self-indulgence, rather, is the fun stuff. That is the pampering, and that is, an important part of it, for sure, 100%. I think that is too necessary. And that is an important component that goes into loving yourself. However, the acceptance part is what I want to, like, take a closer look at, right? Like, just pretend like that didn't happen. It's like we got some, what is this? I clearly didn't shake that. It's fine. We're moving on. So the self-acceptance part is the part that I want to talk about and spend some time on today. So self-acceptance is accepting those parts of yourself that might not be so lovable. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like the parts of yourself where, you leave the lid off the toothpaste, or when you get hangry whenever you haven't eaten. The parts of yourself that you might feel aren't so lovable. And it's easy for us to feel some type of way about them, to not present those parts to the world because, we find them undesirable, and so we're thinking that, hey, others probably will too, right? Like, that's the chance, like, do unto others. Like, if you don't like it, then others probably won't too. And, or maybe you read something that's like, this is an annoying trait or whatever, and so we hide those parts. But those parts are still part of who you are. And when we hide part of ourselves, that also limits our capacity to show our full self, right? Like, you can only be as, how do I say this? You can only be as, like, happy, right? To the depth that you are willing to experience pain, right? So same concept. You can only show up as authentically as you are willing to, share those undesirable parts. And so it's a situation where, yeah, like that might be something that you're not necessarily proud of, but I mean, it's still you. And you is what people love, right? So it's a matter of accepting like who that person is and like what those parts are. So that is a little bit on that. When it comes to like that being like basically the definition of self-love, like accepting the good and the bad and doing the pampering as well, all in one. Like you got all of the bases covered. Like why is it important and why does it matter, right? So it's important because you're the one that you spend the most time with. And so you want to make sure that you like and accept and love the person that you spend the most time with, right? And this is something that I've talked about last week, like knowing yourself and who you are, because you spend the most time with yourself. Now we want to love that person because, yeah, like at the end of the day, oh, you got you, baby. And oftentimes what that looks like is us spending, time like talking to ourselves in a not so nice way, right? We say things to ourselves that we would never, ever say to a best friend. Like, not in a million years, right? Because, like, we love them. And we wouldn't want to say anything to, like, offend them or hurt them. But yet, when it comes to ourselves, we totally do. And, sometimes we even say things to ourselves that, like, we wouldn't say to a stranger. And that's not fair. That's not fair to yourself, to be treating yourself that way. So start being mindful of the things that you say to yourself. That's like, we'll circle back to that later. But just start to become present with like how you talk to yourself. When it comes to actually practicing this self-love, how do we do it? Obviously you got the bath bomb and the fun, the pamper. We got that part down, right? So how do we do like the rest of it? How do we do the parts that are uncomfortable? So when it comes to that, I strongly suggest that you start to take an inventory of the I am statements that you use. So whenever you say things like, I am sorry, or I am so stupid, like you are telling people that you are that thing, right? Instead of it just being a thing that you did. Like, I apologize for this miss on my part, or I, did this stupid thing. And the difference is whenever you apologize for like what you did versus saying like I am this thing, you are looking at it from an objective stance, and you're therefore kind of like shifting the perspective and the way that you feel about yourself. And so, I mean, even if you just think about it, saying like I am something, like you're going to internalize that and take that into like, part of your identity and like who you become, that can internalize and manifest as shame versus if you simply say, hey, like, yeah, I did this thing and that is, something that I did, but it's not a part of who I am. I think that a lot of people are always like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. And like, instead of proclaiming to the world that like you are sorry, I think that it's a much more powerful thing to simply own your own your mistake. I apologize for this thing and move forward from there. Because again, like, that's not who you are. It is something that you did. Same thing if you feel that like you did something stupid. It's not like I am so stupid. It is that, hey, I did this stupid thing. So that's that. We get to my favorite part where I'm going to do eyeliner. So I'm going to try to do it with y'all here with me today, since we got the light. And also brows. We'll do that first. So I am statements, and making that shift is like a really big part of who, or excuse me, what self-love, encompasses. Um, and also the language that we're using to speak to ourselves whenever we're saying, like, I am this, I am that, you're creating a relationship with yourself. So you're creating that dynamic based on, like, how you talk to yourself. And, you know, internalization or not, whether you manifest that into shame, you're internalizing, like, how you speak to yourself, because, like, you're fucking, like, you're in your own head. Like, how do you not internalize that? Like, that is what that is. So it's important that you make a conscious, like, choice in that sense to state not what you are, unless it's something like positive, powerful, that you want to be. We're gonna have to do this off camera. Like, I can't. Hold on. Okay, so now I got, like, a little bit more going on. What I was saying is the difference. Notice the way that you speak to yourself. I am statements versus observations that you make, and from there, making that shift between saying, like, I am, into saying more of, like, this is, or I did a thing, to not do that internalization. And so that shift can make a huge difference in between feeling guilt or shame. So last week, when it comes to the action items, how do we start to love ourselves more, right? And last week, when it came to starting to know, like, ourselves a bit more, how do we do that? And I suggested that you take a look at your pseudo self and your solid self. So your pseudo self being the you that's you, but, like, not. So maybe, like, the work hat type of you, or maybe, like, the family hat type of you, where you hold back a little bit. I mean, obviously, like, you're still you, but not, like, full authentic you. So full authentic you would be your solid self. Like, who are you, who, with whom, and where do you feel like you can be your most true and authentic and solid self, and the difference between how the two of those feel. So what the purpose of that was to kind of help you get some sense of awareness around who and where you are able to lean into your most authentic self, and, like, who you are, and discovering yourself, and when and where you feel like you might be holding back a little bit. So, and knowing the difference and, like, what that feels like, so that you can kind of start to just be more conscious of when you're more yourself versus when you're not. So for this week, when it comes to how do we start to have more self-love for this new person that we've discovered, I suggest that you start to pay attention to the way that you talk to yourself. A lot of times, like I said, we say things to ourselves that we would not say to our best friend, or hell, like, maybe even a stranger. And being mindful of whether or not, like, are you being an asshole to yourself? Are you being nice? Like, what is the way that you treat yourself? Like, when you drop something, or make a wrong turn, or show up late to your job, or, like, dinner with a friend. Like, what are the things that you say to yourself, and how does that play into your overall feelings of self? Because if, let's say, for example, I'm like, oh fuck, I am late again, I always do this, what is wrong with you? If that's, like, the narrative that I'm playing in my head, then that's gonna make me feel shitty, right? I'm gonna feel like I am late, like I am a shitty person, like I am doing this terrible thing, like, to my friend, or, like, whomever is waiting on me, expecting me to be on time. So with that, it's going to play a different role. Instead of, it's like, oh, thank you for being patient to my friend, or I apologize that this continues to happen, I own this responsibility. When you start to pay attention, you might really surprise yourself. And if it does, I would love to hear about that. Um, and make sure that you comment below, send me a message, or share it with a friend, like what's coming up for you. Um, Aside from that, I'm gonna put my lips on and then do like closing thoughts and like see you next time. And we're back. So that's really all I have for you this week. Self love is, like I said, so much more than the pampering that we all want it to be. Yes, that is part of it, the self indulgence, but at the same time, it's also loving those dark parts. And this journey of self love is something that will evolve over time. Like who you are today won't be who you necessarily are tomorrow, and that's perfectly okay because that's evolution and that's growth. And that's something that I also talked about last week. I'll talk about it again. It's a recurring theme. Just give yourself some grace. And, I don't expect anyone, and it's not even feasible to think that you're going to wake up tomorrow and, oh, like, I love me. But every step counts. And so just be mindful of, the narratives that you're playing inside your head, how you talk to yourself, how you handle yourself when you talk to others, and, really pay attention to how you're feeling about yourself. Be thankful for the things that you can do and, celebrate your wins as much as you feel bad about your losses. It's something that is a practice, it's a process, and, it gets easier over time. And so, yeah, my number one suggestion would be to start to consider the language that you use, the narrative, things that you say to yourself, because those are things that only you know. With that being said, I hope this was helpful. If anything landed or resonated, feel free to put it in the comments or to send me a message privately. I'm here for you. And next week, I'm going to be talking about healthy relationships. So, what are they? What do they look like? And how do we make sure that we are creating them in our own lives? So, thank you so much for watching. I hope the setup was better. If you have any comments, concerns, if you have any suggestions, anything that you would like for me to talk about, please do comment that below or send me a message. And aside from that, thank you again. I will see you next week. May you have a day that you deserve.